This Three Beards Media podcast is sponsored by Revelton Distilling Company. When Rob and Chrissy Taylor started following the Kentucky Bourbon Trail in 2012, they fell in love with not only bourbon, but the entire distilling process. Just 8 short years later, in 2020, Revelton Distilling Company was opened, offering an entire family of products including vodka, gin, whiskey, and Revelton Shine. Come visit the tasting room at 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa, where you can sample one of their many spirits, including 4 gold medal winners. Can't make it to Osceola today? Not a problem, as you can pick some up at your local Hy-Vee or Fairway grocery stores. Follow Revelton Distilling on Twitter or Instagram at ReveltonDC or their website www.reveltondistilling.com.
This Three Beards Media podcast may contain mature themes, and if you're not down with that, we got 3 words for you. Like the podcast. Nailed it!
Would you like to sample some of my nuts? Hello, and welcome back to yet another edition of Old Man Strength. I am Tim Johnson, joined as always by Chris Shipley. Chris, how are we doing this evening?
It's been a rough sports weekend.
It has. I actually I'm curious. I gotta admit, I'm a little behind on listening to some pods, but I'm curious to see how the boys at Side of the Storm break down this past weekend. Not a whole lot of enthusiasm, I'm sure. Certainly not a whole lot to talk about.
Right.
Positive, but very excited. So again, if you guys are not subscribed to Side of the Storm with Brent Gervais, Marcus Pfizer, hosted by George Troyce, please go ahead and check that one out. But yeah, it was a rough one. I was watching the game from a bar in Crosby, Minnesota, and I was very happy I was at the bar because it made it very easy to get another beer in front of me after every miscue.
Right. And I would imagine you were pretty hammered by then.
It was things got a little fuzzy by the end of the evening. I'm not going to lie.
Well, speaking of drinking, I've switched my stance. I'm sure we'll talk about it, but I've switched my stance on whether or not they should serve beer at Jack Trice after being in Boone Stadium or whatever the hell that thing is down there in Kansas.
Yeah, it's funny. Before I went to the bar to watch the game, I told my friend who, grew up a Gopher fan, he doesn't follow the Big 12. I said, just wait until you see this Kansas stadium. You're going to think it's just a glorified high school stadium when you see it on TV. And sure enough, he was like, are those just aluminum bleachers? What is going on over there? Yeah, I've enjoyed the games I've been to in Lawrence, all things said. But I can't imagine this was a fun game to go to for a number of reasons.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay, perfect. All right, well then, I guess we'll just go ahead and jump right in. This is, after all, a Three Beards Media podcast. It is Old Man Strength, my sister podcast on the Three Beards Media Network is Bitter Units, and I think right now this perfect guest represents both of those because he is a bitter old man. Welcome to Bitter Units, Aaron Wall. Or Bitter Old Man, welcome to Old Strength. Jesus, I screwed this up already. This is not a good way to go. Welcome to Old Man Strength, Aaron Wall from Bitter Units.
You're crushing it.
Oh, I'm a mess.
Oh, it's
see what happens when we let Tim host a podcast. Aaron, you're in charge of Bitter Units.
I mean, it's kind of like what happens when I host Bitter Units every time we do one. So, I mean, I can't say a whole lot.
No, that is fair.
Says the guy that doesn't get a host any.
Whatever. It's better off when we don't hear you, Chris. Anyway, Aaron, welcome to Old Man Strength. I know that you have a lot of things on your mind and a lot of things you would like to get off of your chest.
Where to start?
I know where to start. Let's start here. Let's start with the jackasses online that are going straight for that kid that missed those 3 kicks. You need to leave him alone.
Yeah. I mean, if you're, I mean, you want me to come out guns blazing on that? If you're the kind of piece of shit that tweets at a kid who is playing a game that isn't getting paid and feels worse about it than you possibly ever could from the fact that he missed that, you can fuck right off.
100%.
I mean, that kid does not need to be piled on. It's not like competitors, especially competitors at that level, are going home and saying like, yeah, okay, whatever. No, he feels like shit all weekend and doesn't need fat 44-year-old white guys with beards tweeting at him. Not that any of us would do that.
That's right.
But I mean, that's, people do it, and it's like, what gives you the right to do that? I know people say, I paid my money, I can say whatever I want. I will give you $5 to say whatever I want to you. Then does that mean I get to say whatever I want? I mean, It's so dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I tweeted something after the game that I'm not going to criticize any of the kids that I know put a lot of effort and all of their heart into that game, and they know where they didn't execute, and they know what they want to work on. My bigger criticism is going to be reserved for the adults and coaches that are making decisions that seem to not be working over and over again. And I don't think a kid missing field goals is anywhere near the problem that was going on with the product we saw on the field on Saturday.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that's just an excuse for people easy to go to, but it doesn't mask the problems that have been happening consistently over the course of the last year and a half, I guess. Really. I mean, honestly, 2021 was a microcosm of some of these things.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Because the talent level on the team right now is most assuredly up from where it was, especially before Campbell got here or got to Iowa State. There's no doubt. That's not debatable. But the results, as the talent level has gone up, haven't gone with them necessarily.
Yeah.
And it's because the team seems to be less disciplined now, and not able to execute the small details as well. So is it because the message has been lost by the kids from what Campbell was preaching? Is it because we're trying to run a scheme that doesn't fit the actual players? I'm not sure. Hunter Deckers is a read option guy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I think he struggles to make those reads. So why do we keep putting him in those situations?
I think that makes it a ton of sense. I said something very similar to my friend on Saturday. I said, he's got great arm strength. He's got some decent accuracy. He sure seems to like to go with what his mind was made up on is the receiver he was going to throw to when the ball was hiked. He's already kind of made up his mind. So yeah, no, I get that. So Aaron, our listeners may not be familiar with you. You actually used to be a high school football coach.
That is correct, if that's what you want to call it.
Do you remember what your record was?
As a head football coach,
Mm-hmm.
in the 1 year I was a head football coach,
Yeah.
I was 0-9.
Oh, and 9. Okay.
Yes, at a very small school. By the end of the year, they couldn't even practice 11 on 11.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So, and that was JV and varsity together.
Oh, wow.
So, it was that school obviously now plays 8-man and did within a year or two after I left there. But I only spent 1 year at that school. As an assistant coach and defensive coordinator, well, when I was defensive coordinator, the 2 years we were 14-4. So, reasonably successful at that level.
You at
but,
least maybe know what you're talking about.
Yeah, sometimes. I had some connections with the ISU staff at that time, actually. So I was able to go to Ames and sit and watch film and do some things with Tony Alford, because that's how I kind of had the connections with the staff. I used to play pickup basketball at lunch in the Forker building with Tony Alford and Mark Coberly.
Oh, nice.
And a bunch of other professors and stuff that were in the building pretty regularly. So I knew those guys decently. So when I graduated and got into coaching, I, called him up. He's like, yeah, come on. We sat and went through a lot of stuff, and they were great. That whole staff was great. That was still, gosh, what year would that have been? 2001. 2004, I think. It was the 04-05 school year. Yeah, so it was still been
McCartney.
Barney Cotton was, I think, the OC at the time.
Oh, wow.
If I remember that right. Sat and, learned some blocking schemes and stuff from him and all that. So, yeah. So I've done a little coaching. Wouldn't call myself an expert, and it's been a long time. So a lot of things have changed over the years.
Well, I certainly would not call myself an expert at all. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking about that today, that with watching them yesterday and then being a Bears fan and watching pretty much the microcosm of the same thing today, where the offense had opportunities and settled for field goals and had miscues on special teams and things like that. I don't really watch football for the X's and O's and be able to break it down like that. I feel like I more watch it for the enjoyment and the entertainment value. I want my team to win, and I care about the players, and I care about the staff, but I also know I can see things that work and don't work just by the naked eye too, right? I mean, I can't tell you how many times yesterday in yesterday's game I saw us run basically the same run right up the middle.
Third and short and fourth and short.
Right.
I don't know why Tom Manning is absolutely in love with running up the middle from shotgun on third and short.
Right.
Like clockwork.
And here's what I think bothers me more is on the third and short, on 4th and 1, I have seen now twice this year us line up under center and sneak it.
Yeah.
So why are we not doing that more when we're at 3rd and 1 but instead we're lining up in the shotgun and handing it off, and we don't have an offensive push?
You got a 6'3", 205-pound quarterback that should be able to get you all yard. Yeah, I don't get that one either. I do not get it. I have struggled with our offensive coordination for a while now. Not that we haven't had a lot of great successes, but there are 2 RB1s and a WR1 who just went off tonight. against the Patriots in the NFL right now. The quarterback you had for the last forever made an NFL roster. There's more offensive talent at all one time than I think Iowa State has ever seen.
Right.
And not to say that there weren't successes, not to say there wasn't a Fiesta Bowl win, but it seems like there was also a lot of squandered opportunities with that much talent. So the play calling has always been confusing to me. But this is not a football podcast. This is not the Cyclone Reaction Show. We have
That's right.
Sigh of the Storm to do all that stuff.
I do want to say one thing though before you go off of that. Just to remind everybody, winning football games is hard.
Yeah.
You know, at any level, because the people on the other side are trying to do the exact same thing. You know, it's there's always a winner, there's always a loser, unless you're playing freaking soccer and you tie or something like that. But you know, so just remember that it's hard. And it's not that people are not trying and that they don't care. But, you know, mistakes get made. It's fair to criticize coaches and stuff, but it's hard, people. 99% of us can't do what they're trying to do. You know, that's from a player's and coach's standpoint.
Yeah.
I did see, it's not like I didn't see some questionable decision making in other games this weekend. I saw the Gophers go for it on 4th down at their own 29-yard line. And that did not go well.
PJ Fleck's an idiot. That's a whole other podcast.
He's elite. Elite. That's his favorite word. Elite. I don't, dude. I live up
you
here.
could kind of look like him a little bit, Tim. If you shaved your head, you kind of would look like him.
I don't think so. I used to be. I actually had Gopher season tickets for a year. When they got the new stadium, I was missing college football. I was here. I got Gopher season tickets, so I've paid enough attention to Gopher football. What I do not understand is how, first of all, in every game, it doesn't matter who they're playing. This weekend against Purdue, they kept featuring a guy in a "Who Hates Iowa? We Hate Iowa" shirt dancing. Because I was at a Gopher Air Force game and the crowd jumped into a chant of "Who hates Iowa? We hate Iowa." It's not like Iowa was the next opponent or whatever. They have this weird thing about that. But while I'm watching the game this weekend, at one point they're playing Ship It Up to Boston. And I'm like, okay, well, that has nothing to do with Minnesota or Purdue. And while doing that, they're showing people in the crowd doing the tomahawk chop, which has nothing to do with Boston or Minnesota or Gophers or even rowing the boat, which is don't get me started on row the boat. Like, I don't understand Gopher fans. I do not understand them. They make no sense. I've spent almost 20 years now living amongst them, and I still do not understand them. I don't know. Come at me, Gopher fans. That's all I have to say.
All seven of you Gopher fans, come at him.
Oh man.
I will say, if we're talking about fans, we can move off the gameplay. I took my first ever road trip to a hostile environment.
That's not true.
Yesterday.
You were in Las Vegas.
That was not a hostile environment. That was not a hostile environment. That's why I add the caveat. Vegas was, I didn't see one UNLV fan. I just got to be honest. Interesting setup down there. The stadium was, I kind of got a kick out of the stadium look. I mean, it was old. I get that. But it was right in the middle of a neighborhood. You know, you literally go downhill and go around this view of houses and boom, you know, it's right there in the stadium. So it's in kind of a valley. It's kind of a neat looking setup. But man, I will tell you, I don't know that I've met more insufferable asshole fans more than KU football fans when they actually are good.
So they're like
It
their
was-
basketball fans.
Oh my God, dude, it was so bad. Well, I first of all, I've changed my stance on whether or not we should have alcohol in the stands after being there, because this douchebag 21-year-old kid came and sat down right next to us, and it wasn't 3 minutes, and I wanted to punch him right in his face.
Yeah, but that's also just because you're old.
No,
I mean, I always want to punch 21-year-olds in the face. Doesn't matter if they're drunk or sober. Yeah, I went to a KU Nebraska game in Lawrence back in the Mangino era when they that 12-win season or whatever that they had, that or 10-win season they had at that kind of fluke of a year. And so Kansas was really good. And that game ended with a ridiculous score, something like 69-55 or something like that. There was no defense being played at all. And I hadn't planned on going there, and the only hat I had was an Iowa State hat, and I'm wearing an Iowa State hat, and it just so happened Iowa State was playing Kansas State that day. So when they announced the Iowa State Kansas State score, I got a lot of hugs from KU fans that day. They did definitely appreciate that. But hey man, they've been they stormed the field after beating Iowa State.
right? And we should hang that as a little bit of a badge of honor. Right? I'm not kidding you, man. This kid was belligerently drunk and just obnoxious beyond all get out. At one point, he went down to here's what cracks me up. They announced that it was a sellout, and I literally looked around me, and there was wide open spaces of seats all the way around me. You could see gaps of wide open spaces everywhere. So I'm not sure where they got the sellout number from. Maybe it was a phantom sellout like Nebraska, but
Yeah, I was gonna
say that sounds like
definitely was not a
Memorial
sellout.
Stadium to me. Yeah.
Now it was it was loud in there, and they credit to KU. They did bring a crowd, and they did help their team quite a bit. But I mean, at one point when that kid snuck down to the front and started throwing beer on the Iowa State band, one of the band parents was sitting right behind me, and he told the kid's dad that if he didn't go down there and tell him to knock it off, he was going to kick his ass. And I was like, we might have a fight right here next to me. And I wasn't even going to be involved.
Oh no,
I got involved.
No,
I'd have filmed it.
Yeah, I was gonna say he would have got involved in the guy that made it go viral, not because he was in there
right
throwing haymakers.
That's right. But seriously, I think I switched my view on whether or not we should serve beer at Jack Trey's.
I bet that kid was blackout drunk before he even got into the game, though.
Right, he was. Yeah, he was. But he had walked down with 2 beers in his hand already. I mean, at that point, you get my point. Like, I mean, there's plenty of opportunity to have drinks and whatever you can, and they're even letting people go out at halftime. So it's not like Iowa State where they let people go out at halftime so that they can go have a drink.
But I mean, I go to plenty of Vikings games. That's on you got to train your staff to not serve someone who's already been overserved. I don't know that it's any different in that, and especially because he wasn't like in the student section. You weren't sitting in the student section, right?
Right. No.
Right. And so like them over serving doesn't mean that it still can't be done in an appropriate way. Like does happen in stadiums all around the country, and does happen in the NFL constantly that people are going to do that. I mean, also asshole's gonna asshole.
Yeah. No, hey, I got it. That leads me to a question or an observation or question, or maybe both. Or I don't know what I'm saying, but here's the thing. Have either one of you watched Welcome to Wrexham?
I haven't yet.
No.
I'm
not even sure what it is.
I saw it. I saw it was on and I wanted to watch it, but yeah.
Yeah, so this isn't so much about the show, but what I learned by watching the show, because I'm not at all versed in football, anything as far as when it comes to soccer football, right? So I know the basics of the game, and that's about it. But like the lore of the fans and hooliganism, like there's a whole episode on hooliganism and it talks about the history of it and how, you know, the hooligans are basically gangs, right, associated with the teams. But like they have laws in where, like, specifically for hooliganism, where like a kid, they showed it, the guy threw beer down across and it hit somebody, right, threw a beer and it hit somebody in the head, legally banned from the building for a year. Like can't even be in the downtown area of town when there's a game going on. Like he can't go to the pub next door to watch the game. He can't be anywhere near it. Like that's crazy to me that like they have laws for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at some point with the crazy crap that goes on in some of our stuff, I'm wondering if we'll get to that point too.
Yeah, I don't know what my take on that is. I just know that Americans really love to call something like that tyranny. So I don't know if we're going to get to a point where people are doing that. But I mean, you certainly do see stadiums banning people, lifetime bans. I don't know
but it's done at the it's done at the club level or the stadium level, right? It's not an actual legal deal.
Right.
I don't know if you watched that Netflix documentary on the Malice at the Palace.
Yeah,
I did not.
I did.
You should.
It's the same one it's the same series that they did the Manti Te'o one on. Untold, I think is what it's called.
Yeah. Right. And
which
the one
secretly was, technically started by Jamal Tinsley, according to that documentary.
it does seem Jamal, come on the pod. We want to talk about that. But because he definitely listens.
Right.
For sure.
I'm sure he's been a loyal listener ever since Marcus told him to come on Old Man Strength. But they have a fan on there who was involved in the altercation that tried to square off against Stephen Jackson. Or Ron Artest. I don't remember who he tried to square off. I think he tried to square off
Stephen
against
Jackson.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
And the fan, I think, thinks in his mind he is not coming off like a total D-bag. Like in the interview, he thinks he comes off looking pretty good. And he comes across as like, good Lord, you are a huge dick that also probably has a tiny one. So like, I don't like, how are you thinking this is the cool thing? But I think there's something to be said for fans that sort of revel in being trolls. Philly Eagles fans that revel in getting under people's skins.
And that's true. I think you're right. And there's some acceptable level of that, right?
Yeah.
I remember, well, Tim, when you were in college, did you ever go to club hockey games?
Oh, I actually spent a season doing color commentary for the college radio station there names doing the club hockey games.
How about you, Chris? Did you ever go any of the club hockey games?
A couple times.
Yeah.
But yeah.
The things that we said as fans to the refs, to other players on the other team and stuff was just heinous. I mean, just vile, uncalled for shit.
I remember one time we were doing color commentary for a game and we were playing it was Penn State. That was before they made the leap up into actual NCAA hockey. They were still a club team at the time. They're playing Penn State. And this was in the early days of radio streaming. So a mom of one of the Penn State players was listening to the stream of us calling the game. and she called into the radio station. And so we talked to the producer back at the station, and he was like, hey, just wanted to let you know one of the players' moms called in and said you're making hockey sound too violent, and she wants you to tone it down. and we're like, well, so Taylor, what did you say? He said, I told her it's hockey, lady, settle down.
Yeah, but I mean, that was awful things that were said.
Yeah,
but it was never genuinely ill-intentioned.
I mean,
you know what I mean?
It's part of
Like-
it's kind of part of hockey culture. Like, so that Untold Story
Yes.
also has a documentary on a minor league hockey team that was owned by a guy with connections to the mob, and how they like developed the reputation of being like unruly and fighting all the time and stuff like that. And the fans already got into that. I don't remember what that one's called. That one's actually a really fun documentary. But I mean, again, that was kind of part of, and I would argue that hockey is probably for the better, taking a significant change to not be so emulating the movie Slapshot.
Goonish.
Yeah,
Right.
right. I mean, there was definitely, because I remember the time when Malice at the Palace happened. There was some not so veiled racism that the NBA was thugs and hip hop
Yes.
culture, while the NHL was going through a particularly goonish era at the same time, and realizing that one is acceptable and neat and fun, and the other one is just ruining our children. So, I mean, I think,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, there is a time and a place to kind of have that type of tomfoolery, maybe, but it can get out of hand.
And the funny part is, and kind of where I was going with that whole concept was, believe it or not, it was Kansas. It was at a hockey game against Kansas club teams. Kansas was terrible, and we were really good. And I think the final score ended up like 24 to something, like one, right? It was just
Jeez.
absolute bloodbath. And we were giving it to Kansas all night. And their backup goalie, who was a kind of portly white guy, came over in front of the student section after the game, did the splits right in front of us, and pointed at us and says, "I'll see you tomorrow." And we all started cheering. We were like, "Yeah, we love this guy." I mean, because the things that were getting said. I mean, your goalie sucks shit. Our goalie's great. All kinds of terrible
Right.
things.
Yeah.
And much worse than that at times. But and this guy, he got it right. He knew we were just giving him a hard time, and he played into it and came over. Unfortunately, big snowstorm came and they bailed out of town, and we didn't even play the second game the next night. So, and we never got to see the guy play. And true story, his last name was Cloner.
I think there's some kind of fun heckling. My friend Steve and I will go to St. Paul Saints games and do probably almost more ironic. We'll sit right behind home plate and just try to riff on somebody's name or something like that. And I think a lot of those players get it. One time I was at a Twins game, and Carlos Lee was in the outfield, and someone shouted out, it got nice and quiet, and someone shouted out, "Hey, Carlos, J-Lo called, she wants her ass back." And Carlos just very slowly hunched down into a stance, and then slowly just started shaking his butt back and forth at the fan. And I was like, "Oh, that's perfect. He understands exactly what that's about."
Yeah. No, it can definitely go too far. So, but it's a good time when we all get it. But did you see the tweet that I had about like that I didn't pay attention to Iowa State sports at all for about 6 or
Yeah.
7 years?
Yeah.
And I was happier then.
And how happier your life was.
You
I know,
I was
right?
like, I was just like, ugh, because the highs and lows. I didn't do that when I was coaching, right? You can't afford to do that when you're coaching.
Right.
You know, so all that time I spent coaching and stuff, teaching and whatnot, I just wasn't a fan, right? I'd watch games from time to time and I'd pay attention, but I was watching them as a coach more than a fan. I'm so far removed from it now that I watch it as a fan. I threw my hat at the end of the game yesterday. And I got lucky that I didn't break my TV because I've got that bottle opener on my hat.
Oh, that's right.
Oh,
And it came flying off of the bill and bounced off the floor and smacked into the entertainment center. I was like, oh, scared the wife, the dog.
Oh, that's
I did that
Yeah.
once at the end of the Iowa State Nebraska game when Paul Rhodes went for 2 on that fake extra point.
Yep, I remember
As
that.
soon as the holder picked the ball up, I flung my hat across it was even before I knew we weren't going to make it or that they hadn't made it. As soon as he picked the ball up, I flung my hat across the fucking room. I was so pissed because I knew it wasn't going to work. God, I was mad.
I liked that play call, though. I gotta say that was one of the times where I thought,
I
Paul
don't
Rhodes
mind being aggressive. There's fine.
Yeah,
I don't mind going for it.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, I probably one of the criticisms I've had about Matt Campbell is he is often a little too conservative, which makes more sense. I'm just a more impulsive person anyway, and I'd always like to go for the win and settle for the tie.
I don't know that you're settling for the tie there, though. I wouldn't call that settling.
Well,
I would call that giving yourself another extended chance to win.
But
Yeah.
you
You're playing the
literally
percentages.
played for the tie, though.
Yeah.
I mean, you're and we're back on the game. Imagine that. But you've made the decision that you're going to try to play for overtime.
Right.
Which, okay, fine, I get it. But what in that game is giving you the impression that anything is going to go right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It just wasn't that kind of day.
My last thought on that game yesterday was him asking that guy to go out there a third time. A lot of people, I think, were upset that how could you put him in that position and so on and so on. To me, I think it showed that kid that he still had confidence in him. And maybe there's more to it.
Yeah.
Maybe there's more to it than what we see. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In other words, this kid's going to have to make a big kick at some point, and he's the guy that we got the rest of the year. And if I send a message to him now that I can't use him here, I'm going to lose him the rest of the year.
Well, not the rest of the year. He's a freshman. You're gonna lose him the rest of his career. Yeah. No, I kind of told that to my dad yesterday too, because he's like, "Why on earth is that kid still up there kicking?" And I was like, "The bigger question that you should be asking is, why on earth did we have to settle for field goals on all 3 of those drives in the first place?"
Right.
Because there was no reason we shouldn't have been able to get that ball into the end zone, but there was for some reason. I know we have really good red zone efficiency. But for some reason, we turn into a completely different team in the red zone, where suddenly it becomes a billion times harder to get 10 yards, and we become like entirely predictable. I don't know how many times before they even got to the line of scrimmage, I called what play it was going to be on Saturday.
Well, if you just called that it was going to be an underneath drag route, you were right 50% of the fucking time. Let's switch topics. What else you guys want to talk about?
That's right.
So baseball is getting rid of the shift, Aaron.
I'm out. I don't know anything about baseball.
I haven't paid attention. They are they
so
making that illegal?
Baseball is actually making the shift illegal. So basically, all infielders are going to have to be standing on the dirt, not the grass, and the second baseman can't cross second base. The shortstop can't cross shortstop. So if you want to line, my understanding of the rules, if you want to line up that third baseman directly behind the shortstop, both immediately right by second base, you can do it, but you just can't do an entire shift. Or if you want to bring in that right fielder all the way to the edge of the grass, right behind the second baseman, you can do that, but they're getting rid of all these stupid things we've seen where there's 7 infielders only on one side of the field.
So
Okay, can go ahead, Aaron, and then I want to ask a question.
well, I got a few questions here
Yeah.
because I haven't paid attention to this. So
Yeah.
The old shift
Yeah.
back in the day when it's the end of the game where you'd bring an outfielder in, shift the guys around.
Yeah.
So is that legal?
I think that's still in play. I don't remember exactly what the rule says.
Right, because you'd move the shortstop over and move the third baseman over and bring the right fielder down or the left fielder down a lot of times into the
third.
As long
third
as
or whatever.
as long as the infielders are on the dirt and the outfielders are on the grass, I think.
But the shortstop still has to be on the left side of the infield.
Correct. He still has to be on the left side of second base.
It's okay. Yeah. I don't understand. Okay, so then the second question I guess I have for that is what's their reasoning? Why are they doing it?
I think because it's just gotten to a point of being ridiculous. I'm actually a fan of the rule. Because I'll tell you why I'm a fan of banning the shift, and I'll tell you why. Because anybody who ever bunted against the shift got called out for breaking one of the unwritten rules of baseball, and I hate the unwritten rules of baseball because it's a bunch of people that are hearkening back to an era that never really existed. It's a bunch of purists that are complaining about something that isn't really that is
the
totally
shift didn't start until 10-15 years ago.
I know, but people have been complaining like if you bunt against the shift, you're lacking the gamesmanship. You should be swinging against the shift. But if you're going to send all your infielders over to the right side of second base, hell yeah, bunt down the third base line. Do it.
I don't see how that's violating the unwritten rules.
I've seen
defense changed the rules by making the shift.
Right.
Yeah.
And then is mad that you've decided that you don't like the arbitrary rule that they've played. That's
fans worry more about the unwritten rules of baseball than baseball players do, frankly. Let's be honest about that.
Well, that's probably true. And I think the shift is dumb because as a hitter, if you see that and you can't just slap a little line drive or ground ball through the left side of the infield or right side, whichever side they're not shifted to,
just stick your bat out for Pete's sake.
Then you're not a very good hitter.
Yeah.
So that was the question.
And any time that you ground into an out during the shift because you just can't do anything but pull the ball means either you're not a very good hitter or let's say it as plain, you're selfish. Then you're not willing to do what it takes to help the team.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's I'm going to hit a home run or I'm going to get out.
Yeah.
It's about that person, which is banana pants, because you don't see the shift. I mean, do they shift when there's people on third base?
No,
right?
No.
Because there's a chance that a run will score if somebody does that.
Yeah.
So they only really do it when, there's nobody on or whatever, and this guy is just up there by himself. Well, you know what? Put yourself on base. That's the point of the game.
Yeah.
But so I don't know. I don't care about the rule per se that they're banning it. I think the shift is dumb, and I'd have got on base every single time against it because I'd have bunted or I'd have slapped one the opposite direction or whatever and put myself on base. But I'd have batted 4,000 against the shift.
So Chris, your question about the shift.
That was my question is I'm a casual baseball fan. I don't sit down and watch just a regular game on TV. If it's a playoff game or something, I will watch it. So I'm going to show my ignorance here, which is, I guess, not any different than any other topic we talk about on Old Man. But,
the first step is admitting.
Playing JT's role on Old Man Strength.
I love it. I love it.
The first step is acknowledging you have a problem.
I don't understand. I mean, I understand why they're shifting, but again, to Aaron's point, why they don't hit the opposite side of the field and punish them for doing that. To me, that would, especially manager wise, why aren't the managers telling those guys to swing away and punish them for that? The game will adjust. If they continue to hit the opposite way, they'll stop doing it. Do we really need a rule that says you can't implement this particular defensive strategy because it's unfair? It's not unfair. There's a way to play the game that can alleviate it. I mean, I can't imagine in the NFL that they would eliminate
the NFL has so many dumb rules, though.
Right, but they don't eliminate certain they don't eliminate plays based off of the other team not being able to not execute against it.
So I think you have a couple of things going on here. One is that the Major League Baseball has been hemorrhaging fans for 20 years now. In the post-steroid era, MLB has struggled.
That's when I stopped watching. To be honest with you, that's when I stopped.
And I think again, when you are trying to, you have a culture that is just so old school about things and say that, bunting against the shift is cheap, then you're hurting that. I think the other thing that's happened is and what makes Aaron Judge so kind of rare here is that he has a chance here to win the Triple Crown. I think Arise is going to win the batting title, and I'm very happy that he's going to win the batting title as a Twins fan.
Yeah, that'll get you through the first round of playoffs.
But we're not going to the playoffs. But the idea though is that it's shifted so much to power, to slugging percentage, that Arise is probably going to win the batting title with an average of 317. Back when Tony Gwynn, the best left-handed batter in the history of the planet, was batting, that would have been, a good year for him, but it wouldn't have been great. You have batting average is a lost art. Just getting a hit is a lost art. Those, as a Twins fan, the piranhas that would dink and dunk and hit these bloop singles over and over and over again, that doesn't seem to happen as much anymore. And I think what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring back a little bit more of that part of the game by saying, this defense that is trying to eliminate hits. Man, I've been to a no-hitter. I know that should be exciting, and I can tell you it is not. Because no one's doing a goddamn thing. You're watching two guys play catch for 3 hours.
Right. So you would say it's not necessarily a change in the rules because it's an unfair advantage. It's more along the lines of the rules that say in the NBA went to, where there's less hand checking and less aggressive defense to open up the offense more, to allow for more scoring. Maybe in football, some of the more lax offensive and defensive tactics that you can make, which causes more of the pass interference types of things that open up those types of
correct. I think it's
to increase scoring in the game.
Correct. I think it has a lot to do with that. Now, you talk about the NBA, you make a perfectly good point. Like, if you just quit rewarding it, then it should go away. Like when the NBA came up with anti-flopping rules, I'm like, you know what an anti-flopping rule is? Just don't call an offensive foul when somebody flops.
Right.
Like if they're going to flop all the time, they're going to get burnt every single time.
Right.
Like the problem is the way that you've officiated the game there, which the NBA still has officiating issues. But
another untold story, by the way.
Yeah, so I see your point of why do you need a rule, but I think the purpose of the rule is to make it more of a hitter's game rather than just three guys slug home runs and the other six just fill something in the lineup. You doing okay there, Aaron?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what a revel tongue right
I saw that.
I'm 3 shots in on Revelton, so I can't exactly type in the chat very well.
Okay, well, since we've mentioned our title sponsor, Revelton Distilling, Chris, do we want to take a break here? Do you have anything you want to mention? Do you have maybe you've got some actual content that you can share with our listeners?
No, I don't have any actual content. I'm not in charge of this beast.
All right, perfect. Well, we'll go ahead and take a break, and we'll hear from Revelton and not Reveltong Distilling. Sorry, Rob. Sorry,
God,
Christy.
I hate you guys. That serves him right. He sent me some KU stuff yesterday. Rock chalked me on a Facebook post, so serves him right.
Oh, anyway, please go ahead and check out our sponsor, Revelton Distillery, 1400 West Clay Street in Osceola, Iowa. Available at your local Javier Fairway store, and we'll get a word from them, and we will be right back.
It's fall, it's football, and no better time to celebrate those victories or soothe away those losses like a drink from Revelton Distilling Company. Imagine a cool, crisp Saturday morning at your tailgate, friends and family enjoying a quick morning cup of coffee spiced up with Revelton's Whiskey Cream and Liqueur. Their cream liqueur is made from a 3-year-old Iowa corn bourbon whiskey with a cream and notes of chocolate and honey. Wow, does that not sound like the perfect way to begin a day watching your favorite team dominate on the field? Then after the game, sit back and relax with one of a kind honey old fashioned with Revelton's Honey Whiskey. Oh, and something new and exciting is on the horizon. So be sure to check out all their updates on their Twitter or Instagram page at ReveltonDC.
Welcome back. We appreciate you guys listening. Once again, this is Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media. Please go ahead and check out all of the other pods we have. Bitter Units with our guest Aaron this evening. Saya the Storm. Fill in the blank with Anya. What am I missing, Chris?
Well, we would include WS Twin Warriors, but the boys have been so lax in wanting to do an episode. They're a little knee deep in school right now, so
I do not blame them.
Yeah, so it's probably going to be more of a monthly pod / YouTube. So.
So like Bitter Units.
I have been told, however, though, that Mackenzie and Caitlin do have a format for their takeover of Bitter Units, so you guys might want to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Okay.
Excellent. Well, once again, we are joined by Aaron Wall of Bitter Units. Aaron, we didn't really give you an opportunity to tell our listeners. I assume everyone who listens to Old Man Strength listens to Bitter Units very religiously.
I would say that assumption is incorrect.
But we didn't give you an opportunity to tell anyone who you are, why we should care that you're on here.
They shouldn't probably care that I'm on here. I am the de facto host of Bitter Units. I will go ahead because Tim always does give me credit for the idea of that podcast, which is accurate. I don't know if it's a good idea or a bad idea, but a couple years later, we're still doing it. So we've had a lot of fun with that. I am 1/3 of Three Beards Media, obviously, with you guys. And if I do say so myself, just an all-around good guy.
Okay, well, you had me until that last part.
I like Aaron. I don't know what your problem is, Tim. Aaron's a nice guy.
Super good right until the end.
Aaron was really fantastic, but getting to meet his wife and his daughter, I really just felt like I needed to apologize to both of them.
Why? Because he doesn't do it on a daily basis.
There's some truth in that.
Speaking of which, Aaron, I met our mutual friend again this weekend, Jennifer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she ended up parking right next to me at the KU parking lot.
Nice. They're great people.
Yeah, so we had a few drinks and listened to Iowa get their ass kicked on the radio. So
well, at least that was a good day.
that was exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you something about bitter units, because this is a question I've always been wanted to ask. Clearly, Tim's the expert. He's a nerd. He loses me every episode when he goes off on some tangent about smart stuff, which again is no different than old man strength. But was it designed because, Aaron, do I have this right, that you were the beer novice? So the basic concept of the pod was that you were going to try new beers and kind of expand your horizons. Is that how I picked up on that?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Originally started out as that I was the beer novice, or the beer idiot, as we called it. And JT was the beer snob, because he drinks a lot of craft beer.
Yeah.
Now, what we quickly learned as we did the pod is that JT is not really a beer snob. Not what I would call a beer snob, and what most people would think of as a beer snob. Because he doesn't put that much effort into it, which is a good thing. He just drinks what he likes, and he goes about his day.
Right.
And, doesn't begrudge anybody, and doesn't try to be cool about it, like the real douchey people that are into beer do.
Right.
Or as our buddy Joel used to say on
United We Drink, the didn't participate in the craft beer circle jerk. So which is definitely not JT. That's not who he is as a person. So the format kind of just evolved from there. Now it's a little less of that than it used to be, although we do like to give JT a hard time about the fact that he doesn't seem to pay attention to anything we say on the pod. Like 10 minutes could pass and we'd have talked about it 10 minutes ago, and JT will ask a question sometimes about what we just talked about. But
God love him.
So I've obviously learned a lot doing it for the last couple of years. I am still absolutely a novice, because I do not have the developed palate to pick out all the different types of flavors and things that Tim can, right? Just through years of practice and doing it. And I feel the same way about whiskey, even though I like and drink a lot of whiskey. I don't get the nuanced flavors as well as some people do. But I know what I like, and I drink a lot of whiskey. Speaking of which, Rob, when you're listening to this Bitter Units episode about whiskey, bourbon episode, I want to do one with him and talk booze, which still fits right into what we do. It's still trying to educate people and having a conversation about it. So, that's kind of the idea. It's what we were going for. I don't know how well we do it, but we try.
I when people ask me about it, a lot of times I'll talk about Wayne's World, the movie. When Noah Vander Haven, or whatever his name is, they pitched the show to him and he goes, "It's just two chimps on a Davenport." And I'm like, that's kind of what this is. It's just three idiots. But Aaron said his education is there is kind of a sneaky little thing that we do in there, because we always try to bring on guests as often as we can. And we learn a lot about different breweries around the country. And I'm always learning things. That episode with Bradley Miles was probably off the rails in a good way, because it was just me having so much fun listening to and learning from him. But we do get kind of some of those things that sneak in there. We always do a tasting on the show, and Aaron's feedback used to always just be, "It tastes like beer," and now he's actually starting to pick out things that are very subtle. And I'm like, it's been fun to watch his journey.
He's growing up.
My boy's all grown up, and he's all grown up.
Yes, I would probably be more like Aaron. I have a hard time picking out nuances and flavors and things like that. I'm kind of, I like what I like and things like that. I would imagine that if I did a blind taste test and you told me to pick out certain things between two beers, I probably couldn't do it.
Well, it comes down to like anything, repetition.
Yeah.
You know, the being able to identify something comes down to, one, have you had that thing before, and can you place it right?
Right.
Like Tim will talk about, cardamom and things like that. And I can't say that I know what the flavor of cardamom is all that well, right? So I have trouble picking that out. But musty, grassy hay reminds me of growing up baling hay and being out in the field and all that. I can pick that out, no problem.
Right.
So there are parts of things like that it's repetition. It's knowing, when you get that flavor or get that aroma or whatever, you can say you have an association with it. So if you don't have anything to associate it to, it makes it really difficult.
Right.
Until you've done it 4, 5, 6, 7 times, and because somebody told you, well, that is this. Like we've talked about it a bunch, and I don't know if we've ever even covered it on the show per se. And they talk about it on, here we go again, United We Drink a Lot, because Mike's very attuned to it, apparently. Diacetyl. I don't know what diacetyl is. I don't know that we've ever covered it on Bitter Eats and what that off flavor is. So I don't know if I can pick it up. I don't know if I'd be able to pick it up or not,
Hey, side note, I should get us a flavor spike kit and send it out to each of you guys, and we should actually do a flavor spiked episode so you can see what these off flavors are that I talk about.
Yeah.
And I'm not always sensitive to all. Well, and that's the other thing, is like beer is a subjective experience, and it's not just subjective in, you like Coke, I like Pepsi. It's like, I can't taste this, you can't taste that. Some people cilantro tastes like soap, other people it doesn't. That doesn't mean that there's a billion other things like that we don't necessarily even understand about what people's palates are, or what they've had to eat, or how that's evolved, or how your palate changes as you age. But we've also been lucky enough that the beers that we've had on the podcast generally have been pretty good and don't have things like diacetyl or DMS, or some of these other, I've mentioned trans 2-nonenal from oxidation, but there's a limited amount of those things. So it's been fun to see Aaron try to develop a vocabulary, and it's helped me, because we just tend to fall into like the same 5 descriptors all the time, and it starts to get annoying too.
So do you think, I'm going to ask you a few kind of questions here, just based off my knowledge. Like, if somebody tells me that I want you to try this IPA, I instantly think to myself, I'm not going to try that. I'm not going to like it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think sometimes people have a preconceived notion of what they may or may not like just based off of what somebody else may have told them, or a one bad experience with one particular beer? Or
for sure.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Absolutely.
because
there are
I had-
IPAs that I absolutely don't want to drink,
right.
because they're not all the same, right? They're not all made the same. They don't all use the same hops. They don't, the IPAs that are straight up pine trees across my tongue, I don't want them. I don't like
Right.
them. I'm not a fan. But I know people that love that, right? And it's a personal opinion on it. We talked about it a while back on, well, maybe it was the last episode. I think it might have been the Bradley episode, where we talked about hazy IPAs from the New Englands, right? In general, I don't mind them. They taste all right, but I can't drink more than one. I get one, maybe 2, and I'm done. They're not my jam, which is weird, because people think, oh, stouts are filling and this, that. I can sit and drink stout all day. It won't bother me at all, So person to person, beer to beer, it's all different. So, I mean, I would never there are beers that I wouldn't buy, or I will stay away from some things if I don't know the brewery or stuff like that. One of the things I learned from bitter units is that if you want to find out if a brewery makes a good beer, drink their lager or drink their pilsner.
Okay.
Right? Drink a beer that is simple, quote unquote simple from a flavor standpoint
Right.
to a certain extent, because they're harder to make. And if they do that well, then the other stuff's probably okay. Right. And then it just comes down to whether you like the particular way they put that beer together.
I mean, I also think that beer suffers from a really bad lexicon of descriptors. We say something is spicy. Well, both black pepper and cinnamon are spices. So describe which spice you want to pick. Or we say something that is hoppy, and hops can be fruity, they can be floral, they can be herbal, they can be earthy, they can be like so many different things. I remember one time a local radio DJ here sent me a DM me on Twitter and said, I just had an IPA that tastes like gummy bears. What is that? And I was like, well, that actually is coming from the hops. And so when we say hoppy, people immediately just go, oh, that means bitter. But it doesn't mean bitter. And some people that have said they don't like IPAs, they don't like hoppy beers, have found an IPA to be their favorite beer. If you took the word IPA off of, they wouldn't say that. But you're right. People come in with these total preconceived notions of what these things mean, and it doesn't help them experience the beer.
Good example of that is JT and wheat beers.
Mm-hmm.
JT at the beginning of the podcast, when we started Bitter Unit, said he did not like wheat beers.
Right.
How many wheat beers have we had
Right.
that aren't quote unquote labeled as wheat beers per se?
Okay.
And they're good beers. And he's like, this is a damn good beer. It's not wheat beers, right? It's the way those particular labeled wheat beers that you've had are constructed that you don't like those particular beers, not wheat beers as a whole.
I asked because of that exact reason, right? I tried an IPA and didn't like it. I hear a lot of people talk about how good it is. Same thing with a stout. A real heavy beer, I don't know that I enjoy a stout or a wheat. I'm more of a pilsner, lager, simpler type of beer. But I would like to be able to try those things. So how do you get somebody over that? For me, here's my problem. I'm going to go and I sit down in a restaurant or I sit down in a brewery. I might want to try that IPA, but I would hate to buy it and then not like it. And now I've spent $6 in it, and it's
but that's,
you know what I mean?
I get that, but that's also a chicken shit way to live to a certain extent, right? Because every time you go somewhere,
I
new
think
and do
that's
something,
fair. That's why I'm asking, right?
But every time you go somewhere new and do something different, there's always the risk that it's going to suck,
right?
That's part of it. You go to a new restaurant, you go right, and if you that's a learning experience, right? Okay, it costs you $6, but in the grand scheme of things, whoop-de-doo. Now it will help a great deal probably, that to have a list of well-respected IPAs,
right?
Let's say, that if you see it, you can say, I know based off of feedback from Tim or me or whoever you trust, right, that this is a good IPA. Right now, you try a Bell's Two Hearted, for example, right? A beer that you may not order, but is a very good, well-respected beer, right? That you probably wouldn't order that if you saw it on a menu, but if you know of that beer and you say,
right.
okay, I know this is supposedly a really good beer, because it's not a flash in the pan beer. It's been around for a long time. It's been the same for a long time. It just consistently good. Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, right? Consistently good older beer. Get into some of those bigger brands where you're going to get big and fresh beers, and start with those. And we did that on the pod, right? We started with established long-term brands before we got into some of the newer players.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
I think one other thing too is that, that you definitely get at a brewery. You don't necessarily get at a distillery. Some kind of do. Is, can I try a sample of that before I order a pint? Or the dreaded topic of flights. Where
Well,
you're
that's
able
kind
to
of where
try.
I was going with this conversation.
Yeah,
That was going to be
right.
my next question.
But what I will say is, so it's insane. I chuckled when Aaron said there's a chicken shit way to live, because when you go to a new restaurant, though, you don't ask, can I have a sample of that bourbon steak before I order a full.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Can I have a sample of that chicken sandwich before I order the full chicken sandwich? Because
Okay,
that sounds insane.
Let me stop you though for a second.
Chris does.
No, I
This is the
don't.
guy at the deli counter at the supermarket. Can I have a sample of that mortadella before I buy a pound?
Yeah, no, you do it. You just buy it and you accept the risk. And so
That's
it's
fair, but I think the difference is, and not to be nitpicky, but the difference is I know what a chicken sandwich generally is going to taste like. There's so many variances of what
no, you
this
don't.
particular IPA
No,
might
no, you
be.
don't. No, you don't.
Yeah.
There are 3,000 kinds of chicken salad. You have no idea what that tastes like any
I
more
don't
than
eat chicken
anything
salad
else.
anyways. That's a bad
Well,
example.
but it's just because it's chicken doesn't mean it's prepared the same way, cooked the same way,
Or prepared well. Yeah.
or prepared well, right? Same thing goes with beer.
Right.
There are
and that's again,
thousand beers that have mosaic.
these are
hops.
questions that I've come up with when I've listened to your pod and
Yeah.
you guys are trying a certain beer, and I'd be like, they make it sound really good, but I'd be afraid to try it.
But again, so you know what a chicken sandwich is because you've had a chicken sandwich. You took
Right.
that risk at some point, right? So
Fair.
if you're going to go into a brewery and say, I don't know what an IPA tastes like, so I'm never going to order one, then take the risk at home.
I would
Take
say
the risk
that
somewhere else.
I would say that maybe sushi is a good example, right? I
Yeah.
never tried sushi before. I tried it first. Now when I go, I try to find something new. I'm not afraid to order this new particular roll that I've never tried before and be afraid that it's not any good and then I won't like it.
Yeah.
Well, and
But you
other
certainly
thing
didn't go
is-
say, hey, can I try one sample of that
Right.
entire roll
No,
before
that's
I
fair.
eat it, before I order it?
Now, let me ask you a question. If they're advertising a flight of sushi to try it, I would do that.
And I
Well,
have
they
no
have-
problem with the sushi.
and they
flight at
have
all.
those.
Yeah.
And they have
Right.
those, right? They're
Yeah.
Right.
samplers or whatever you want to call them, right?
Yeah.
So explain to me
Um,
why you have a problem with beer flights.
Okay, I'll start.
Because I'm not trolling. I generally don't see the
no.
problem.
Look, here's the thing. For you, and I'll never, if people from Bitter Units are listening to this, I'm gonna ruin my stance on Bitter Units. For you, Chris, I don't think a flight would be a bad idea
Okay.
because you are trying to find out what you like,
Right.
right? I'm going to pick on JT because he's not here to defend himself.
He knows
I
what
give
he likes.
JT, I give him a hard time because he knows what he likes,
Okay.
right? And he orders a flight because he just wants to try every single beer, despite the fact that he knows that he is not experiencing that beer to its fullest by ordering a flight,
Okay.
because you're not going to drink all four of those beers the way they are intended by the brewer to be drank. They're going to sit out. They're going to start to oxidize. They're going to
Probably
get
light
warm.
struck. They're gonna
get
get flat.
light struck, whatever, right? As you work your way through them.
That's fair.
And a stout is a great example, and maybe the most obvious one of the difference between a beer and temperature.
Mhm.
The way a stout tastes at 39 degrees out of a tap
Mm-hmm.
versus if you let it sit out and get to 50 degrees
Okay.
is two complete. It'll taste like two completely different beers almost, right? But both good in their own way. But they are intended to be served warmer, really.
Right.
So it's one of those things where, for JT, who knows what he likes, he knows what kind of beers he likes. I think you're shortchanging yourself by ordering flights. because you're not getting the full experience. For you, where you're just trying to pick out something, hey, do I like this? Do I like that? Because you're trying to decide what you want to order maybe a full beer of.
Right.
Which is the idea of getting the sample, the splash,
Yeah.
right? From, can I try this? Can I try that? You're at least exploring, right? You don't know what you like.
Fair.
Flights are a great intro to beer. And I think that's a fair way to go about it.
Okay.
Right. If you're not into craft beer and you want to get into craft beer, trying flights is a good way to get samples and get an idea of what you like.
That's fair.
I'll also say that
Disregard all of that, people who listen to bitter units.
yeah, exactly.
When you're listening to our pod, I'm completely 100% anti-fault.
I think craft beer has found itself in this kind of internal struggle where we've always tried to elevate our experience to be like wine or be like whiskey or be like something else that's considered a more higher class type of drink. And so if you go to a winery and you do a flight, that's like a guided flight. There is someone there that is talking you through each one of those as you drink it.
Right.
And telling you what flavors you should be able to pick out.
Right. Yes.
I've
been on wine tastings. Yep. Okay.
Yep. You do a flight at a brewery, 99% of the time, they hand you a card with what beer it is and they move on to the next thing because it operates more like a bar rather than an experience. And so you're losing all of that. Now, if breweries could do flights the way wineries did, great. But most of the time they're operating more like a bar. People aren't going to wineries and sitting down and drinking and treating it like their local bar, but they're going to their local brewery and treating it like their local bar. And so it changes the experience and the way you experience those things. So like Aaron said, the way I experience a beer from my first sip changes by the time I get to my last sip. It's going to be different. And so if I'm only ever giving you a sip, if you know what you're doing, then that helps you realize whether or not you want to order it or not. Or if you're just learning to understand styles, it gets you into that. But I would never order a steak on a menu based off of a single bite that someone brought out from the kitchen, because it doesn't really tell me anything about the entirety of the steak.
Right.
Well, and a lot of times, well, look at it this way. I'm sure, and it's the same way with beers. I'm sure that you've had a bite of a mac and cheese and thought this is really good.
Yeah.
And 10 bites into it, you can't eat anymore because it's so rich. It's so that initial flavor is so big that it just compounds on itself. There are beers that way too. Mm-hmm. You get a drink of that beer and you, this initial drink's really good. And then by the time you get a 16-ounce pour of it or a pint, you don't even want to drink the whole thing.
Right.
Right. So that's just, the way it goes sometimes. You live and you learn and you go on. But that's the only way to figure it out, what you like and what you don't like.
Perfect. Cool.
No, I like it. I like how you led us right into that conversation. And I also like that Aaron had to admit something that he doesn't want known on the other pod.
I know, right? Well, and I think maybe I don't know, for new people that come to your pod and want to listen to it, that was kind of the things that I thought of when I first started listening was I'd really like to have that beer, but I don't know that I would like that. And I don't know if I would like this and things like that. So I think it helps to kind of dumb it down for people like me.
I'm going to leave that alone, and we're going to go grab a word from. Am I saying this right? Wine Trust.
Yes.
Apologies, Kyle.
That was not me. I typed it right this time.
Apologies to Kyle Lehman. Please go ahead and check out Kyle Lehman at Wintrust Mortgage for all of your mortgage needs. We will hear from him, and we will be back in just a second.
Are you in the market for a new house and unsure of the mortgage process? Want to know that you have someone looking out for you? Kyle Lehman from Wintrust Mortgage is a down-to-earth, knowledgeable lender who can be there for you in your corner. He can work with you in any of the 50 states and is just what you need to expand your home search. Kyle will work with you through the entire process with little to no work from you. Take the worry of the mortgage process out of the equation so that you can focus on looking for your dream home. Contact Kyle at www.wintrust.com/Kyle-Lehman or call him at 515-473-0546.
And we are back once again. In case you fell asleep during that last segment and woke back up and are very confused as to what you are listening to, this is Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media. You can find us wherever fine podcasts are found. But if you're listening, that means you already found us. So you probably don't need to be told that. We are talking with
God, you were really bad at this.
oh jeez. Well, whatever. Do you want to be in charge? I can let you run the reins one time,
God,
see how
no.
this goes.
Oh God, no.
As the host of the longest running pod that's under the Three Beards Media umbrella, I set the bar pretty low as a hosting skills. So
Yeah, so yes, if you were to sleep, which tends to happen with Aaron, is either he or someone else is going to fall asleep while he's talking.
only did that once on the pod.
Shut up.
I wasn't really falling asleep. It was more of a passing out.
Yeah, it was succumbing to sleep. Shout out Mike Urevich.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
I want to know if you're going to get Meg's brother on.
Oh yeah, that's
on
right.
Bitter Units, so that we can hear
we
some juicy stories about Meg. That's
we do need to do that. I need to follow up with her about that.
Is her brother in the industry?
He is, yes. So very it could be very entertaining. It's another kind of crossover for us. Yeah, so Aaron, you came up with the idea. You mentioned that you came up with the idea of doing a podcast, and doing this podcast of Bitter Units in particular. Why?
That's a good question. I question myself on that every day. I think part of it was I wanted to be, at that time we were at TGS, right? The Tailgate Society. Shout out to those guys for letting us start this thing and being awesome. But we were there and I was looking to do more, be more involved, do something else. Because I'd done some writing. But with my travel schedule, the way it goes, some of the ideas, like the trekking tailgater that I wrote for Tailgate Society, was something that was really initially designed to be written by multiple people, because it was all about travel, right, and where you'd been and your experiences. And so the trekking tailgater was supposed to be what's the word, the nom de plume or whatever that's called, pseudonym, pen name, whatever, I don't know, whatever that's supposed to be, for anybody to write under. And that never really played out, and I couldn't keep that going, in part because I was going to the same places all the time. I can only write so many stories about Missoula, Montana. So even though I travel a lot for work, it's frequently to the same places. So that, was something where I wanted to try to help and get more involved and get more content out for TGS. So one of the things that I like, obviously beer, and we were getting into the pandemic, and I'm like, well, let's do something, right, with beer. And I don't know exactly how that, it just kind of came to me that this is a good idea, because I think we were in the Slack channel, just talking about it, and I was learning things from Tim, and and I'm like, well, this is
that, Aaron. Don't.
I know.
God, we have a rule on here. We don't praise Tim. We don't encourage him. It's like feeding a puppy.
Yeah,
it absolutely is.
But that's
seduced by praise.
Really where it came from, right? Because we always got into, or Tim always got into his rants about, the concept of the beer snob, right, to some extent, and chasing that elusive beer and the culture around that, right? And so I was like, well, what if we had somebody who doesn't know anything about that with somebody that does, and an expert who's going to tell that person who does those things that they're wrong for doing those things, or that that's not the intent, not necessarily even wrong per se. But so it was just an idea, and a good concept, even if we didn't quite execute it as well as maybe we had hoped with the personalities. Because like I said, JT didn't end up being real beer snobby. JT's great and we get along, and we're, obviously all good friends these days.
Right.
So it worked out, but it didn't exactly stick to the original concept as much as it maybe could have. And really and honestly, to do that, I think you'd have to rotate people.
I think you would too. Yeah.
And keep bringing in somebody new that doesn't know. I mean, your beer snob might be able to stay the same for a long time, but I think you'd need that novice to rotate through,
Right.
and really get the educational component more involved.
I think though that good content and a good pod does evolve like that though. I mean, Tim, I think you would say that we are a completely different podcast than what we were when we first started and first came up with a concept.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, we first were just going to be on here just bitching about things that annoyed us, like two old men. I mean, really, that was the initial concept, and it's then it kind of evolved into talking about our dads and things like that, and then eventually we would get guests on, and it's just kind of evolved into its own beast now. So.
Yeah, I mean, and I think to Aaron's point about just trying to create content out of the idea that these are things we're already talking about already. I think that's something that conversation happens organically, and so podcasts are going to kind of follow that same suit, where if we're going to go down a rabbit hole, sometimes you end up on it. Like sometimes I used to call these Wikipedia Saturdays, where I was trying to trying to procrastinate and avoid like mowing the lawn or whatever, and so I would be killing time on the internet, and I'd look something up on a Wikipedia. I'd be like like watching Law and Order, and like, oh, what's the name of that actor? And the next thing I know, suddenly now I'm learning a lot about World War II because I went 6 clicks down the Wikipedia rabbit hole.
I've done the same thing. I would watch movies and hear some obscure fact in a movie and look that up, and next thing you know, I've missed 25 minutes of the show I was watching because now I've delved into IMDb trivia lists and Wikipedia pages and whatever else. So yeah, I've done the same thing. I think part of what I wanted to get out of this episode too was to talk a little bit about Three Beards Media and what we're trying to do with it, because and I'll piggyback off Aaron's point. TGS opened their doors to me and let some guy that didn't know anything about what he was doing, and frankly still doesn't, play around with hype videos and hop on a podcast and things like that. And for them to be open and then to allow us to do what we did there was great. And I personally would like to congratulate Ted and Jake and Sean for their new Landlocks podcast that they're doing on Cyclone Fanatic. I mean, that's amazing. That's a big deal, and that's great for them. So I'm super happy, and and I think everybody should go and listen to them and subscribe, and from what it sounds like, take the opposite bets of what Ted does. From what I understand. But I think that's what we would like to do here is take on new content and give different people a voice. Anya with Fill in the Blank is a lot of fun. I think she is got a fun little concept there. Sigh of the Storm honestly is just something that I personally am just proud of, because Tim, as you and I have talked about before, I don't know how surreal it was for me after the first time that we talked to Marcus Pfizer, and I went upstairs and I told my wife, said, "Oh my God, I just talked to, a guy that I idolized and looked up to and was an NBA lottery pick. And he's just a super down to earth, nice guy that is now a friend of mine." You know what I mean? And to be able to put something out there that he was excited to do, and Brent and George, and help those guys is phenomenal. So, if you're out there and you have an idea and whatever, bring it to us and let's take a look at it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the great thing is that we're continuing to try to be a platform for people that have things to say, because we certainly got an opportunity to just say whatever the hell we wanted to.
Or if you're like me, things that people that have nothing to say.
Or terrible takes like JT's.
We should just do a whole podcast that's just JT. It's just called JT's Terrible Takes.
We did.
We tried that.
No, I mean like an entire series where all he does is get on there and talk for an hour, and we could, nothing generates engagement like people getting mad at you for having a bad take.
I'm just going to tell you, Mackenzie and Caitlin, I talked to Caitlin today, and Mackenzie and Caitlin, all I heard was something about Halloween dating profiles and college drinks. That's all I've heard so far, and I don't know where that's going to go, but it sounds amazing.
Yeah, there's some more things. Well, you mentioned Fill in the Blank with Anya. Anya has a little bit of, she's never shy for an opinion about anything.
No.
Which is one of my favorite things about her. But kind of like you said, to have nothing to talk about, but still be able to fill an hour talking about things. Boy, she is just engaging to listen to. Even more so than I was expecting, and I was already expecting great things from her. So please, if you have not listened to Fill in the Blank with Anya, please give that a try. I certainly know that she has some opportunities to bring guests like Aaron and I on, so that she can mostly just make fun of us for an hour as well.
That's appointment radio is what that is.
Aaron,
there's more stuff coming. So
I have one other thing, and I just thought of it. I'm going to give you guys a chance to bash me here, probably.
Sweet.
Maybe. Chris was just talking about when he got a chance to talk to Marcus and how surreal that was for him.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what that concept is. I've never felt that way about anybody. I've never considered a famous person or a person like that anybody that I couldn't talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make me like some kind of psychopath?
It does. It absolutely does.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I was just scratching the surface on that.
Because I think about that a lot, that kind of stuff a lot, right? I see people who are super into things, whether it be Star Wars or Marvel movies or, whatever, anything. So people get into things and are just jacked about them and excited and lose their minds about it. And I don't have that gene. I don't enjoy anything that much.
Yeah, I know. We can tell you live a soulless existence.
Well, that's what I'm like. Does that just make me broken, or are there a lot of other people like me? Because it seems like everybody's got something.
I'm afraid
I don't
for
think
what
it makes you broken. I don't think it makes you broken. I think I don't know how to explain it. I mean, it wasn't something that I was too fearful to ask for, right? Like, I mean, clearly, I mean, let's be honest.
Right, sure. Well, you're not afraid to ask anybody for anything. It doesn't appear.
I sent a direct message to Troy Davis just 2 days ago, and he actually read it. So I'm just waiting for an answer back on that. So, I mean, I'm not afraid to send a message or an email. But I think for me, it was just, I look at where I was 15 years ago in my life or 20 years ago in my life, where I had no self-esteem. I didn't think very highly of myself and didn't think that I'd accomplished much, to then be able to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with somebody that, you know, was at the top of their game, and as it was, you know, I mean, he doesn't say this, but I mean, is a legend in Iowa State's, you know, fandom and things like that. One of the best players to ever play at Iowa State. So for me, that it was more of, I look at my life and go, holy shit. Like, I never in a million years thought that I would ever be able to do something like that.
Yeah, or, you know, Bill Fennelly or John Walters or
Right,
Jamie
any of those,
Pollard,
yeah.
or all these folks that we've had on, you know, Dan McCartney calling us professional. We joke
Right,
about
we're
a lot on the pod.
professionals. Which I don't know that he'll call Cy of the Storm that when he's on.
But it's one of those things where, you know, yeah, it has certainly gotten a lot more comfortable. But I think, Chris, to your point, there is something that would I have thought this is what I would be doing? Probably not. So it does feel certainly surreal. Aaron, to your point of not caring about anything,
I don't think that's exactly what
I
I
think
said,
no,
but
no,
okay.
That's exactly what he said.
I'm pretty
I'm
sure
not
what you
passionate
said.
about anything.
Yeah, I worry for when you retire, because I don't know what you're going to do. I'm more worried for your wife when you retire, because I don't know what you're going to do other than annoy her.
Already
Yeah,
do
that
that.
poor girl.
I already do that.
And so that's why I'm glad that we have better units, so that we give you something to care about, because your wife and daughter apparently aren't enough for you, you soulless asshole.
FYI, in a couple years, your daughter's not going to want you to be able to
Oh.
you're going to be nothing but an annoyance to her.
Buddy, already there. Already there.
Yeah, no, yeah, that is one of the things that has been fun about doing bitter units, is to kind of you know, go from a guy who only wants to drink flavored beer to getting text messages from you on a random Thursday because you're drinking a new beer that you're really excited about. It's been fun to see for me, certainly.
Well, I mean, I don't know if I'd say really excited, but yeah, okay. I mean, that's the thing, right?
I mean,
That's what I'm
excited
saying.
enough to send a text message.
Yeah, well, you know, I just don't get. I don't know. Maybe my highs are just not as high as other people, and my lows aren't as low as other people, and maybe that's the difference. I don't know.
So you're mentally healthy, is what you're saying.
Right.
The
Oh,
rest
now
well,
we
maybe.
really-
the
now
rest
we
of
really
us all
hate
have
you.
a lot of issues. Yeah.
Now we really hate you.
Hadn't
rest of
really
us got
kind of thought of
problems.
it quite like that, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
excellent. Well, good. Well, I think me admitting that Aaron is sane is probably a good place for us to stop. We do
A
appreciate
lot of people that know me might disagree. But
No.
we'll see if they send us any feedback on that.
we've already talked to one of your brothers, and I'm already expecting to hear from him again after this. No, this is usually where we let guests plug whatever they want to plug. You're going to plug all the things that we're going to plug, but Aaron, I'll still let you go ahead and do that.
Okay. I want to plug.
If you do
Obviously
Gators
better-
Daily on Twitter, I'm going to.
No, that was a good one though. Obviously, bitter units. Check it out. Rate, review, subscribe. It's really important. And I know I don't say that on our pod very often because I don't want to shill too awful much. Because that's not why people are there, right? But it does matter if you review the pod and you subscribe and rate it. And the same goes for this pod. it does make a difference in the algorithm and the ability to find the pod and all that kind of stuff. So help us out, do that on any pod that you listen to on the Three Beards Media Network. And then, boy, plugging anything else, I can't. It's not Gators Daily. So that's already been done. But I would say, and I mentioned it earlier, if you are not, even if you're really into soccer, Welcome to Wrexham is a well done show. It's interesting. You will learn about the game itself and the culture around that game, and it's interesting. So you should check that out.
Cool.
Excellent. Chris, anything that you have to add?
Nope. Side of the Storm every Wednesday is going to be launched every Wednesday. So be sure to subscribe and rate to that one as well. And fill in the blank with Anya. Make sure you subscribe, rate, and hit that notification button on those so you know when those guys come in. So I will tell you that we do have some. I know I keep saying this. I swear to God, it's coming. A really, really big podcast coming that's going to be local to Des Moines. That's going to be super important. Still working out. Let's just put it this way. It's that big that it's taking this long to work out the logistics and a host and timing and things like that. But also I've had a few inquiries that I've sent your guys' way that we're kind of vetting out some new stuff. So it's coming. So we're excited. So
Absolutely.
if you're looking for if you're a sponsor and you're looking for a home, we'd be happy to talk to you. I'll shill for us, Aaron. I got no problem. I got no problem shilling.
I love it. Perfect. I love it. Yes, please go ahead and check us out. This is Old Man Strength. We are strength_old on Twitter. You've got Grad, Dad. You've got Tim Johnson and our guest Aaron L. Wall on Twitter. So if you want to go ahead and get on here and tell him how terrible of a guest he was, we would appreciate that. So please go ahead and check us out. But once again, this has been Old Man Strength, a podcast of Three Beards Media, brought to you by Revelton Distilling Company. And with that, we will see you guys next time.
Check out Bodega Cats on Twitter.